Once upon a time, there was a simple and beautiful girl named Cinderella. She lived with her evil stepmother and two stepsisters. The stepmother did not like her and made her do all the household work. Her stepsisters just never had to work. They just roamed around the house in their fancy dresses. They always made fun of Cinderella because of her plain dressing. One day, the king announced that there would be a ball at the palace and invited all the maidens in the kingdom. Her stepsisters got very happy and started preparing for the ball. They chose the finest dresses and shoes and spent hours in front of the mirror, doing their makeup and picking the right accessories. Cinderella wished to go to the ball too, but she knew her stepmother wouldn't allow that. Still, she tried asking her stepmother, "Please, stepmother, may I go to the ball?" But her stepmother just replied, What are you even saying? You can't go to the ball. Why would I allow that? Just stay here and clean the house." She just wanted Cinderella out of sight so she could enjoy the ball without any disturbances. So Cinderella felt very sad and went to the garden to cry. As she was crying, she heard a voice. She turned around and saw a fairy godmother standing in front of her. The fairy godmother asked her why she was crying, and when Cinderella told her about the ball, the fairy godmother said, "Don't worry, child. I will help you go to the ball." Cinderella's eyes widened in surprise. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Could this really be true? Was her wish going to come true? Cinderella nodded her head and thanked her fairy godmother. The fairy waved her magic wand, and suddenly 4 mice appeared in front of Cinderella. Seeing the mice, Cinderella became scared. She didn't want to hurt them, but she also didn't know what else to do. The fairy godmother said, "Don't be afraid, Cinderella. These mice will help you get ready for the ball." Then the mice began to squirm around her, and in a few minutes, they brought her a beautiful pumpkin. Cinderella was surprised and asked, "What are we supposed to do with this pumpkin?" The fairy godmother waved her magic wand and said, "Bibbidi-bo-bidi-boo." And instantly, the pumpkin turned into a golden carriage. Cinderella couldn't believe her eyes. It was so beautiful. Then the fairy godmother turned to the mice again and said, "Help Cinderella get ready for the ball. And when the clock strikes 12, remember, Cinderella, the magic will end." The mice nodded their heads and began helping Cinderella get ready. They brought her beautiful clothes and shoes and accessories. She looked absolutely stunning, and when her hair was done, the mice brought her a ring that sparkled brightly. The fairy godmother said, "This ring will take you back home whenever you want to come back." Cinderella thanked her fairy godmother and stepped into the carriage. The horses were beautiful. They pulled the carriage all the way to the palace. As Cinderella neared the palace, she saw her stepsisters getting out of a similar-looking carriage. She hid immediately. Her stepsisters entered the palace, and soon other maidens started arriving too. The palace was beautifully decorated. There were bright lights everywhere, and the music was lovely. Cinderella couldn't help but smile. She was so happy to be here. Suddenly, one of the lords entered the palace. He was very handsome and had a kind face. Everyone noticed him and began talking amongst themselves. The lord walked towards Cinderella and asked her to dance. She agreed and they began dancing together. He didn't know who she was and she didn't want to reveal her identity, so they danced in silence. They danced beautifully and everyone praised them. But soon the lord had to leave as he had an announcement to make. Before leaving, he promised Cinderella that he would return and ask her hand for marriage if she would agree. Cinderella agreed. When the lord left, her stepsisters came to her. They were furious and asked, "Who does your father think he is? How dare he talk to you at the ball? Do you think you deserve him? You are just a servant." Cinderella just smiled and replied, "He didn't know who I was. So if you have a problem with it, then there's nothing to worry about." Her stepsisters just scoffed and returned to their seats. They were plotting something and Cinderella could feel it. She knew they were up to some mischief, but she didn't know what. As the clock struck 11, Cinderella remembered what her fairy godmother had said and became scared. She ran to the carriage and reached home safely. However, when she saw the time and remembered the godmother's words, she quickly left the palace and ran away. In all the hurry, one glass slipper which she was wearing was left on the castle steps. When she entered the house, her stepsisters and stepmother were back. They were drinking and having snacks. They were in a good mood. Her stepmother asked, "Where did you go? You weren't at the ball, were you?" Cinderella lied and said, "I was just in the garden." Her stepmother just nodded her head, thinking that Cinderella was lying. The next morning, everyone in the kingdom was talking about the ball. Her stepsisters were boasting about how beautiful they looked and how all the lords had complimented them. Suddenly, the king entered the room and asked, "Who was the maiden whom the lord had gone to meet last night? If she is willing, I shall marry her." Her stepsisters became extremely happy and screamed, "We are the maidens, O king! Please ask us if we are willing." The king was shocked to see the claimants. He asked them why they were lying. One of the stepsisters said, "My sister and I both danced with the lord and he liked both of us, so we have the right to claim him." The king was furious and asked them to leave. They bowed their heads in defeat and left the room. Cinderella just smiled and said, "Your Majesties, they are my stepsisters. I don't know if you would believe me or not, but they weren't at the ball last night. I was the only one who was there." The king and the queen were shocked. They asked her why she hadn't revealed herself. Cinderella said, "I am sorry, Your Majesty, but I didn't want to come to the ball in the first place. My stepmother didn't allow me to go." The king became furious and asked for her stepmother and stepsisters to be brought to him. He punished her stepmother and stepsisters, and they were never allowed to enter the kingdom again. Cinderella became very popular, and the king and queen were very happy to have her as their daughter-in-law. At the ball, the lord and Cinderella had exchanged numbers. So when the king asked who the lord had gone to meet, he called Cinderella without any hesitation. She entered the room and everyone was shocked to see her. Her stepsisters and stepmother couldn't believe their eyes. They were stunned to see Cinderella in such a beautiful gown. Cinderella smiled at the lord and went to greet the king and the queen. They were all very happy, and soon the wedding preparations began. Everyone in the kingdom was invited to Cinderella and the lord's wedding. It was a beautiful ceremony. After the wedding, they all had a wonderful feast and a great time. The king gifted Cinderella a beautiful castle. He wanted her to live happily ever after in that castle. Soon she moved into the castle with the lord and began living happily ever after.